Have you ever wondered why some truths about men and women are ignored, silenced, or deemed offensive? Why do we persist in believing that men and women are essentially the same, not just in worth, but in nature, motivation, and desires, despite what history, psychology, and experience have taught us? Carl Jung disagreed with this notion. He believed that beneath the masks we wear, beneath the societal roles and polite expectations, lie primitive forces and deeply rooted psychological patterns that influence how men and women perceive, desire, and often misunderstand each other. He termed these forces as archetypes, with one of the most significant and frequently misunderstood being the Anima, the feminine image within the male psyche. While philosophers like Schopenhauer viewed women through the lens of biology and instinct, Jung delved deeper. He recognized that much of what men think about women and what women anticipate from men stems not from logical understanding, but from projection. We don't fall in love with who someone truly is. Rather, we fall in love with what they mirror back to us from the depths of our unconscious mind. According to Jung, this explains why many relationships are fraught with confusion and disappointment. A man doesn't see a woman clearly. Instead, he perceives his anima, his inner image of femininity shaped by childhood myths, dreams, and shared narratives. He falls not for a real person, but for a symbol. And when reality eventually shatters this illusion, disillusionment sets in. This projection is not a mistake, but a function of the psyche. The danger arises when we confuse the projection for the actual person. Jung believed that modern society promotes this confusion, teaching us to believe in soulmate fantasies, idealized love, and eternal compatibility. However, these concepts overlook the deeper truth that men and women harbor unconscious energies that attract, collide, and repel in ways beyond conscious control. The harsh truth is that most people never truly fall in love with each other. They fall in love with their own projections. When these projections fade, they feel betrayed, not because the other person changed, but because the illusion has died. Jung's perspective on the feminine and women was intricate and far from demeaning. He didn't simplify women to mere instinct or biology. Rather, he viewed them as carriers of profound psychic power, intimately linked with nature, the moon, the body, and the enigma of the unconscious. However, Jung cautioned that when men project their anima onto women, viewing them solely as healers, muses, or saviors, they strip women of their complete humanity. Even worse, these men remain stuck in a state of psychological immaturity. A man who idolizes the feminine without integrating it stays in a boyish mindset, seeking emotional rescue, shirking responsibility, and romanticizing rather than engaging in genuine relationships. The woman, ensnared in this projection, often bears a burden she never chose, the burden of being a fantasy rather than her authentic self. Jung believed this was a root cause of relational suffering, not hatred, not inequality, but unconscious confusion. So what occurs when these fantasies start to crumble and men begin to perceive women not as deities or adversaries, but as human beings with their own shadows, needs, and instincts? That often painful moment marks the start of a psychological growth. But only if a person has the courage to retract their projections and confront their inner feminine aspects first. This is a hard truth for many to accept, as it means love isn't about finding the perfect partner, but rather about facing the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. This process requires effort, shadow integration, and a level of emotional honesty that society, with its polished scripts and romantic narratives, rarely prepare us for. If a man's psyche is troubled by a misunderstood anima, a woman's psyche grapples with the animus, her internal image of masculinity. Just as men project onto women, women also project onto men, seeing strength, salvation, security, or danger. These mutual projections drive attraction but also lead to endless misunderstandings. Jung didn't highlight this to create division. He did it so to help us truly connect with each other beyond illusions and projections, as complete individuals on the journey of individuation. However, to reach this point, we must first confront our fantasies. Carl Jung did not subscribe to the belief that men and women are blank slates entirely moulded by culture and socialization. While he acknowledged the significance of upbringing and environment, he also highlighted the presence of ancient, profound, archetypal forces within our psyche, shaped over millions of years by evolution, experience, and myth. To Jung, the notion that men and women are psychologically identical was not only naive, but also perilous, as it obscures the subtle yet crucial ways our instincts, biological drives, and unconscious imagery influence our behavior. Ignoring these forces doesn't lead to greater enlightenment, rather it results in increased confusion, reactivity, and a tendency to blame others for unresolved inner conflicts. Schopenhauer, who viewed women as irrational and instinctive in a derogatory manner, Jung offered a different perspective. He considered instinct not as a sign of inferiority, but as a profound connection to the unconscious, to nature, and to the cycles and rhythms that men have long feared or sought to control. In Jung's framework, women were not mere vessels of surface emotion, but custodians of inner life, embodying the mysteries of the body, the intuition of feeling, and the symbolic wisdom of the moon, earth, and womb. In a world consumed by light and logic, many things are forgotten, yet our connection to instinct doesn't come without consequences. Jung argued that just as men are often tempted by the allure of control, women can be overwhelmed by emotional pull. Both genders suffer when they lose balance, with the conscious mind becoming dominated by what lies beneath. For women, the unintegrated animus may manifest as cold rationality, sharp criticism, or possessiveness. In men, the repressed anima might surface as emotional chaos, projection, or dependence. These forces aren't chosen, they are inherited and exist within us, whether we are aware of them or not. That's why instinct is so essential. When left unconscious, it doesn't vanish but controls us from the shadows. Much of what we call falling in love, desire, or attraction isn't a rational decision, but rather a movement of the psyche, driven by ancestral needs, archetypal desires, and unspoken inner wounds. For instance, Jung believed that men often seek greatness not just to achieve, but to escape the fear of inner emptiness. The urge to build empires, conquer, and invent often stems from a lack of emotional integration. Men tend to channel their energy outwards because they haven't learned to confront their inner feminine or anima. This is why many men are drawn to women who embody gentleness, beauty, nurturing, or intuition, not just because these attributes are attractive, but because they symbolize something lacking within themselves. They don't merely desire the woman, they seek what she represents. This dynamic often leads to misunderstandings. A man might idolize a woman for her sensitivity, tranquility, or depth, not realizing that he's actually seeing his own unconscious thoughts projected onto her. As the relationship progresses and this projection fades, he may feel disappointment or anger, believing she's changed when in reality, the illusion has shifted. Jung referred to this as the withdrawal of projection. Though painful, it's the beginning of maturity and the path to a genuine relationship, where both individuals see each other not as saviors or objects, but as fellow souls grappling with their own shadows. Consider the reverse scenario for women who often project the animus, the masculine figure within their psyche. This figure is frequently idolized as a protector, a hero, or a strong and steady presence that can bring order and safety. When a woman encounters a man who even slightly embodies this image, the attraction can be intense. However, it's not truly about him, it's about the inner archetype, the image residing in her unconscious. Just as a man becomes disillusioned when his fantasy of the perfect woman fades, a woman may feel let down when the man turns out to be fallible, emotional, or weak. She sought a hero, but found a human. Jung never claimed these patterns were wrong, they are natural. Yet, when unexamined, they lead to suffering. Unchecked, instincts drive us not towards love, but towards projection, disappointment, and resentment. So, what's the solution? Jung believed the way forward involves not eliminating gender differences, but becoming aware of them. The feminine and masculine exist within everyone, and only by recognizing, integrating, and respecting these opposites can we begin to relate to each other as whole individuals. He termed this lifelong journey individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by confronting your own unconscious. This means owning your shadow, reclaiming your projections, and no longer expecting the opposite sex to carry your wounds, fulfill your unmet needs, or complete you. Jung believes that many people never reach a certain level of self-awareness, remaining caught in cycles of instinct and fantasy, always blaming others for their inner turmoil. However, those who are willing to do the work and explore their own minds start to view relationships not as a means of salvation, but as reflections, not as battlefields, but as pathways to wholeness. According to Jung, what most people refer to as love isn't truly love, at least not in the way we commonly understand it. It's not mutual understanding, deep spiritual connection, or even a conscious choice. In his perspective, the love experienced by most is better described as projection, an emotional, charged illusion created by the unconscious and projected onto another person, often the opposite sex. Jung warned that this projection is so compelling that many people mistake it for reality, believing they've found their soulmate, their other half, their destined partner. In truth, they've merely encountered their own psyche reflected in another person. For men, this projection occurs through the Anima, the internal feminine archetype formed by all the women they have known, loved, feared, or imagined. The first imprint of the feminine, often their mother, forms the base of this inner image. As they grow, cultural stories, personal experiences, and unconscious desires add layers of meaning to it, leading them to see women not as they truly are, but as vessels for this archetype. They fall in love not with the woman herself, but with their own lost soul, which they see in her. Jung didn't dismiss romantic love. In fact, he believed that through these projections, we are actually being guided towards completeness. The Anima symbolizes the undeveloped emotional and intuitive side of the male psyche. When a man is attracted to a woman who embodies these traits, it's not merely about sexual attraction, it's about integration. His soul is urging him to recover something he has lost or ignored. However, the issue arises when, instead of doing the inner work to reclaim these qualities, most men attempt to possess them through the woman. Instead of cultivating sensitivity, empathy, and inner calm within themselves, they latch on to the woman who represents these traits and try to keep her near. When she inevitably fails to remain the perfect reflection of that inner ideal, they feel betrayed. The projection collapses, the illusion fades, and the man faces a choice: blame her for changing, or realize he never truly knew her. This breaking of illusion is what Jung called the moment of withdrawal. It's painful, disorientating, and often humiliating. But it is also crucial, because only then, when the projection is shattered, can real love begin. A love not based on fantasy or unconscious desire, but on clear-sighted presence and mutual recognition. Now consider dynamic women who also experience projection. In their situation, this projection is shaped by the animus, the internal masculine archetype, often influenced by the father figure and later enriched with the cultural ideas of strength, intellect, protection, and purpose. The animus manifests in dreams and fantasies as a wise man, a warrior, a guide, or, at its darker extremes, as a dominating tyrant or a cold critic. When a woman projects her animus onto a man, she often perceives him as more than he truly is, a symbol of salvation, order, and purpose. She believes he can lead, stabilize, and give her life meaning. However, what she is actually seeking is inner direction, inner strength, and mental clarity, traits she has yet to develop or accept within herself. When the man fails to perfectly embody these characteristics, when he falters, becomes vulnerable, emotional, or lost, she too feels disillusioned. The illusion shatters and she is faced with a decision: retreat into resentment or start the process of integrating her animus, learning to rely on her own inner voice of reason and structure rather than exclusively seeking it in another. Jung described this whole dynamic as a tragedy of modern relationships, not because love is destined to fail, but because most people never realize what's truly happening. They aren't falling in love with each other, they're falling into each other's archetypes. As long as these archetypes remain unconscious, the relationship is more of a performance than a partnership. He wrote that where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power dominates, love is absent. But what happens when love becomes power? What happens when the unconscious uses attraction to manipulate, dominate, or fulfill unmet childhood needs? Then what we call passion turns into a battlefield. Relationships become power struggles disguised as devotion. We chase what we lack, control what we fear, and use each other to avoid confronting ourselves. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes essential. The shadow is everything we repress, deny, or disown within ourselves. And in intimate relationships, it doesn't vanish, it gets projected onto the other. The controlling man who accuses his partner of being manipulative, the anxious woman who sees her partner as emotionally unavailable. Often what we most despise in others is what we secretly carry within. Love then becomes not just an opportunity for happiness, but also for healing. If we are courageous enough to examine our projections, reclaim our shadows, withdraw the anima and animus, and see the other as they truly are, we begin the slow and painful journey towards real intimacy, not fantasy, not possession, but presence. Carl Jung understood that few are willing to undertake the inner work this requires: self-confrontation, humility, and the dismantling of comforting illusions. Yet for those who persevere, who meet another not as a project to be rescued, but as a whole person walking their own path, love becomes a vessel of transformation rather than a quest for validation. It becomes sacred. Jung never promised comfort. His psychology wasn't meant to soothe egos or uphold cultural myths, but to liberate the soul, guiding us through our own darkness into the clarity of self-knowledge. When it came to men and women, he offered no easy roadmap or utopia of perfect harmony, only truth, and truth is never easy. The hard reality few admit is that most of what we call love is really a mirror, and much of what we desire in another is what's missing inside ourselves. Our deepest heartbreaks arise not from the other's actions, but from the collapse of our own illusions, and only when those projections shatter can a genuine relationship begin. Jung did not claim the sexes are interchangeable souls in different bodies. He saw the feminine and the masculine as complementary forces, each bearing its own wisdom and wounds. Unconsciously, they clash. Consciously, they can heal. Love is not meant to complete you, but to awaken you. If you perceive something divine in another, ask whether that divinity also sleeps within you. If you're drawn to someone's calm, safety, excitement, or strength, ask what part of yourself has been silenced and now yearns for that energy. Until we do this inner work, we'll repeat the cycle of attraction, projection, disappointment, and blame, mistaking our own wounded soul for another's and calling it romance. Jung taught that the only way out is through individuation, the long, difficult journey to wholeness. It means meeting your anima, integrating your animus, confronting your shadow, reclaiming your projections, and standing before another not as half a person seeking completion, but as a whole person ready to share the path. This isn't sentimental or storybook love. It isn't comfortable. It is real love. And in a world drowning in illusions, it may be the rarest treasure of all. Which part of your shadow has shown up most when you were trying to be loved? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching. Keep exploring the depths and awaken the light within. I'll see you in the next video.